Carb loading, it's like the most controversial topic. The main idea behind carb loading, that's very much backed by like science and a lot of research kind of comparing all these different methods like that you talked about, for example, like the depleting old school carb loading versus just increasing your carb intake versus even not doing it at all. There's a lot of comparisons out there, but the main idea is to eat more carbohydrates in order to top off our glycogen stores. And glycogen is basically stored carbohydrate. We can store around 2,000 calories on average, depending on the size and just makeup of the human, which is why once we are running for like over 2 hours or so, it becomes really important to have topped off glycogen stores because we burn through those pretty quickly in the longer endurance stuff since you're out there for such a long time. So the main idea behind carb loading is to top those off because we're going to be running, 2 hours if you're Eliud Kipchoge, 3 hours, 4 hours plus on race day. So the idea is to kind of top off the fuel stores prior to starting the marathon. A lot of it does have to do with like our size. And I think, if you're a bigger person, you may have the capacity to have just more storage, but a really big piece of our storage capacity, like potential, is actually too like how well we've practiced this in training. So like I don't tell all of my clients to carb load like every single weekend for their long runs and training. But, if we are practicing, maybe having like a higher carbohydrate meal before, the night before a long run, if we are practicing, increasing our carb intake when we do increase our overall mileage or intensity, we're essentially training our stores to be deeper. So if you think of glycogen storage, I like to use the metaphor if it's like a cup, if you're training your body to use carbohydrates and you are kind of practicing this during your whole training session, or not training session, but training season, you're essentially teaching your body to have like a bigger cup when it comes to capacity. So if you're listening to this, the weekend before a race, and you have never thought about this before and you go to carbo load, it might not necessarily be pushing you to your potential because your body isn't used to that. So I would say if you are someone, like you said, if you're a smaller maybe build, or you're a much larger build, depending on the person, it has to do a little bit with that like nature, but also nurture, like how well we've adapted ourselves to be this way. My main takeaways are to actually truly like carb load properly, which really we want to take about 8 to 12 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight per day for 2 to 3 days before a marathon. And for some clients, we'll do the lower end for a couple more days. And for some clients, we'll do the higher end for fewer days, depending on what they're comfortable with. But if you calculate that out, like just to use yourself, for example, let me do math real quick on the side. At the lower end of that, that's 475 grams of carbohydrate. And on the higher end of that, that's 700 grams of carbohydrate per day. I always get that. Do you mean like total over the course of 3 days, or do you mean per day? And the answer is per day. To actually do that, I think we do have to be a bit intentional about it because for a lot of people, that's a lot of carbohydrates and they're not going to get there intuitively, like on their own. So I think taking the time, sitting down, I actually have a free guide on my website that helps you do this, but just coming up with some examples so that you're not like going hungry or accidentally skipping meals and snacks the days leading up to your race, which tend to be maybe more stressful. You're traveling, you're not exercising as much because you're tapering, so you're not as hungry sometimes, or you're nervous. So I do think we have to be intentional in order to make that happen for most people. I think in terms of like, I calculated 709 grams of carbohydrate. Do I need to get exactly 709 grams of carbohydrate in order to be successful? I mean, unless you're trying to break a world record, probably not. I think if you are just getting closer to that goal, that's a really good start.